narcissist want from you more than anything else? It's your attention, your inability to move on from how significant they think they are in your life. So our inability to move on from this subject could be considered like a secondary effect from us still making the narcissist and narcissism the primary focus of our life. The art of knowing is knowing what to ignore. What if our attention to the subject itself is a causative factor? What if our obsession with trying to understand narcissism is denying us the opportunity to move forward with our lives? After all, does picking at our emotional wounds allow it time to integrate? What if we don't notice that we're now formed an attachment with the topic itself, and we are blinded by the belief that dissecting all the details of it can bring about a cure? When, in actuality, what happens ever so covertly is that we form yet another allegiance. It's just another flavour of ice cream we don't like. Sure, we're no longer in it, but now we stand beside it and carry notes in our back pocket wherever we go, referring back to it. Is there an expiry date that we're ignoring at the price of our own inner peace? What if, unconsciously, we fear peace? For some people, sitting in silence, in meditation, actually causes anxiety because trauma can invert things. For example, unsafe people are safe to us. Our filters of perception are coloured a certain way, and we see the whole world through this lens. And we don't know what we don't know, right? But we see the world as we are. What we speak becomes the house we live in. I want to reiterate the significance of what I stated in my most recent videos. I feel I can only talk about the subject of narcissism from a different perspective, with a different goal in mind. What we speak about is generally what we think about, and vice versa. And this creates an emotional home, a psychological vantage point from which we experience our life. How much time have you invested in trying to understand the narcissist in your life? Have you discerned a point at which this focus on the narcissist or the topic of narcissism, have you discerned if there is a fine line where you can tell it's become detrimental? How much do we really need to know? I mean, we could dedicate our entire lives trying to understand this subject, yes? I do want to acknowledge that we have this great need to understand the nature of narcissism, to comprehend the why of abuse and trauma. However, by observation, it's very evident that most people who consume this subject end up being consumed by this subject. Initially, in our innocence and ignorance, we desperately need to understand what happened to us. But then we become so engrossed, mostly because pathologically narcissistic psychopathic behaviour is so disturbing to us, so abnormal to what we innately somehow know is normal, such as kindness, consideration, responsibility. So the struggle to accept the harsh reality that yes, evil does exist in the world. Some people are plain agents of destruction, chaos and exploitation for one reason or 100 different reasons. But how much of our lives do we want to dedicate to fixing this, decoding this? Could this dedication be more wisely invested? Does focusing on illness attract health? For some, this will become an identity, which they will deny and instead attack or defend, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously, because there is a type of juice that feeds our ego from playing the role of the martyr, the hero, the scapegoat, sacrificial lamb. There are all sorts of shades of denial at different stages of healing and individuation, or the path of reclaiming our life from this enmeshment. And from a compassionate standpoint, you can see how we may be vulnerable to adopting yet another disempowering identity, a fictitiously empowering identity that maybe we were only meant to adopt temporarily if our only identity was with the narcissist. In the initial stage, any identity serves the purpose of validating our suffering, abuse, and invisibility. I'm just asking you to consider how much of your vitality is being siphoned by your attention to this subject. Have you developed the awareness and sensitivity to noticing and knowing what feeds you and what depletes you. And when I talk about ignoring the narcissist or the subject, I'm not recommending repression or denial or avoidance, but rather to ignore is to pull your attention away from something, from a place of wisdom, choice, and self-care. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. We could go down 500 different rabbit holes with the subject of narcissism, all interesting, but just more flapping around in the mental plane. More info to digest, new concepts to comprehend, until you just have enough of thinking about trauma, abuse, and narcissism. This subject captivates us until it doesn't. We suddenly may realize that all these mental analysis leads to a type of paralysis, mostly of your life still not moving forward. And that's because our focus is still on the narcissist in one way or another. Our reference point is always this story. It's like the most significant thing that's ever happened to us. And maybe it is, thus far. But do we have room for anything new to enter when our awareness is constantly revolving around this? There will always be suffering, but we must not suffer over the suffering. There's many traps on the path of supposed healing. Many become ambushed by their own ego mind and, from avoidance, continue to neglect their tender hearts. Many are confused about love, afraid of love, continue searching for love, never realizing they are love, still enslaved by the narrative their mind continues to dispense. Yet, to know you are a prisoner of your own mind is the dawn of wisdom. I invite you to join me to start on a journey back to your heart. We've all spent enough time doing mental gymnastics, yeah? Are you exhausted yet? I am. I'm so over this subject. Dissecting it, regurgitating it, swimming around in it. We build our whole life around it. We become experts at it. I want to break that spell and remind you that no matter how deep your heartbreak, it can and will heal. But you must provide the proper nourishment to support your heart's healing. You need to create the right, safe internal environment for hope to be restored, for faith to reawaken in your own being's resilience. You must come to know experientially for yourself the power of your own love of yourself. Essentially, what I'm inviting you to do is to get out of your mind and the mental plane and drop into your heart. I'm encouraging you to go on a mental detox. Ignore the narcissist, ignore narcissism. Give yourself a well-deserved break. And in the next video, I'll give you suggestions of how to do that.